The Marathon Server Slam has come and gone, and as one of the most potentially hotly debated and controversial releases of 2026, how did that Server Slam go, and what chances do Marathon have going forward? My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and I have some things to talk about here. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of upcoming new releases, such as Bungie's latest shooter, Marathon, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. To say that I have had very mixed feelings about the upcoming release of Marathon would be a massive understatement, but it does heavily reflect the overall opinion of the gaming sphere from what I and many others have seen. As a product, it's visually striking and has a lot of hype built up around it due to a returning beloved classic gaming franchise, but on the flip side, we've had numerous issues with controversies, including the massive anti-real art scandal of stolen assets being in Marathon prior to its release, and then of course Bungie's extremely checkered past with the Destiny franchise. I, for one, have a very mixed opinion of Bungie writ large, so I'm extremely familiar with what Bungie has done with Destiny in the past and how they ran that franchise, frankly, into the ground. Given all of these issues, people are very rightfully on the fence about whether they even want to bother trying to jump into Marathon, and I was one of those people, which is why I wanted to get into the Server Slam and put a good amount of time into it while it was available. By the end of the Slam, I had wrapped up at just shy of 25 hours, hitting level 22, and as a result, I feel like I have a pretty solid understanding of not only how Marathon feels, but where I think it's going to go in the future. Right off the jump, Marathon as a baseline game is pretty damn good, man. I really have been enjoying it. I played a bunch of games solo, I played a bunch of games with random teammates, both via text chat and voice chat, and I played a number of games with people I know IRL, such as my partner Jane and my friends, to get an overall understanding of how it feels to play this game. The Server Slam had the first 2 maps that will be released with the full title available to it, as well as 5, technically 6, of the shells or playable characters that you'll be able to get. As far as content richness is concerned, the Server Slam had a lot going on. Both the Perimeter and Dire Marsh maps were quite enjoyable to play with a lot of variety to them. All the shells are fun. I wound up playing Destroyer, Triage, and Rook. I have not touched the others, but I really enjoyed my playtime with all 3 of those classes. And the weapon variety was very solid. My teams and I never got far enough to unlock some truly high-tier gold level loot, but even the base grays felt competitive and compatible with the ability to get in, get some objectives done, find some loot, and get the heck out. Now, as someone who's not an aficionado of the extraction genre writ large, I am not someone who really knows much in terms of being able to compare to other titles in that genre. I played a little bit of Dark and Darker back when that was coming out, but obviously that is a very different style of game, being very medieval dungeon delving focused, much slower, much more methodical. And I have no experience whatsoever with things like Arc Raiders, Escape from Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, and the like. As such, while I've heard some people say that Marathon is not really doing anything different in the genre, it feels very unique and interesting to me, and I imagine a lot of people who are coming over from Destiny or other similar shooters. The gunplay is, as always, extremely crisp and responsive. I would expect nothing less from Bungie. The actual visual design is super sick. It feels way more interesting to engage with when you actually have your hands on the controller rather than just viewing various different cutscenes and trailers and cinematics and the like. The sound design is phenomenal, and let me tell you, as someone who played a lot of solo games in Marathon thus far, it is very, very creepy intense, which I absolutely adore. And the story and the evolving world are very interesting. The contracts that you're able to complete as part of the Server Slam and eventually the full release will have you interacting with the major AIs, I'm assuming they're AIs anyway, I don't have direct confirmation on that, but of various different organizations and mega corporations who have interests in the Tau Ceti system and on Tau Ceti 4 and want you to further those interests for them. In exchange, you'll get items, weapons, gear, upgrades, and other types of progression, and these objectives do get more and more difficult to achieve over time. This actually gives a pretty solid narrative progression to the game that I really wasn't expecting, because yes, while you're loading into general multiplayer maps with either solo or a team and fighting enemies, fighting PvE bots, etc., you still feel like you have different specific mission objectives and overall zones to go into to actually complete those objectives that make things feel kind of like a campaign, but with the very high intensity player versus player engagements that you can't really get in like a typical FPS shooter campaign, right? Sometimes you fail right off the bat, sometimes you succeed right off the bat, but it never feels like it's completely impossible to get done what you need to get done. The objectives may be largely simple, it's more about the environment and the enemies that you're going to encounter along the way that provides the challenge and keeps things interesting. There's one objective in particular where I had to acquire a limited time, like decaying data core from a particular zone and then run to a different section of the map to be able to upload it without dying at any point in between. And the core itself had to be extracted from a pretty heavily fortified position held by a lot of NPC bots, and which was also very popular to raid by players. That's meant that actually going in as a solo player and playing it stealthy was my best bet to acquire that item and get out successfully, lest I get bogged down in some intense firefight. And it led to an extremely tense set of scenarios where I was doing my absolute best to only fire my weapon and get in engagements when I absolutely needed to, and as a result I was able to wind up getting out, which was super cool. The variety of gameplay that these objectives can provide is already very interesting, given only the 2 maps that we are currently able to access, and the overall limited armory that we have available as well, because a lot of the weapons and upgrades and things that are going to be in the full release are not included in the server slam. And of course, as you would expect from any good extraction shooter or extraction game in general, the rush of being able to complete your objectives, find some good new loot to add to your vault, and then successfully extract without dying is huge. It is extremely fun. It is extremely engaging, whether you're playing solo or with a team, and it's part of what kept me coming back again and again alongside the story progression to play a ton of Marathon over the weekend. Considering how skeptical I've been of the game leading up to its eventual release here in a couple of days, it's a pretty solid turnaround for me, and I've been seeing the same from a lot of people, including my friends. However, the big issue that keeps coming up, and what I want to talk about for the majority of this video, is how Bungie is going to be able to handle the game and what they're going to do with it in terms of monetization, seasonal progression, new content, etc. going forward. Because yes, while the base game of Marathon is very, very solid, and I think you'll hear that from a lot of people who've put some time into the server slam over the last few days, it's the future that is really going to decide how this game lives or dies, as it is with any live service title. The unfortunate reality of the modern gaming scene is no matter how strong the base product is, when you bill yourself as a multiplayer title with a lot of live service elements, people are going to have a certain level of expectation for what you're going to do with that promise. They're buying into something that they expect to continue advancing and progressing and changing and evolving into the future, and unfortunately, Bungie has proven time and time again that they're not very good at handling that type of ecosphere with the overall Destiny franchise. Destiny's been extremely good at times. There's a reason that I played it through its entire lifespan, from the beta of Destiny 1 all the way up through the end of the final shape. Notably nothing past the final shape, because this game is dead and is basically never going to come back, in my opinion. But in the interim, there were a ton of great moments. The opening of the Vault of Glass for the first time. The release of the Taken King expansion, going through King's Fall and all the associated quest lines. The Rise of Iron expansion that provided a lot more insight into the Iron Lords and expanded the Iron Banner. The release of Destiny 2 with the Red War campaign. The revival of what was very quickly becoming a dying game with Forsaken, and then a number of positive expansions along the way, like Witch Queen and the final shape, meant that there was always at least the hope that something good would happen on the horizon. However, for myself and for many, many people, while those things were good, the negatives far outweigh the positives, and it leaves a sour taste in the mouth for what Bungie might be able to do with Marathon as it progresses. Given the fact that Marathon is an extraction shooter that is going to get more and more intense as time goes by, players get stronger, their knowledge bases grow, and the overall player base shrinks as people get fed up and leave, I can see things very quickly running into a wall where you just don't have enough players continuing to buy into the product, especially if seasons are paid, as I'm sure they probably will be, to be able to continue to maintain the game financially. That means that for more casual players who want to see more of the story progression, new maps, new locations to fight, and new enemy types, new weapons, there's going to be less and less incentive to actually decide to buy into that content, when more likely than not, day one they're going to drop into some map to see what the new thing is and immediately get dunked on by a full team of 3 stacks with all gold gear who are just trying to get geared up for whatever the next pinnacle challenge is going to be against the 5 other teams in the world that are able to get there. It is going to be a rapidly diminishing pool of potential players, and that is going to kill the game faster than anything else could. I was already seeing some of that burnout happen with my friends when I was playing. Some of us were on board to just keep getting wiped, go in with free sponsor kits and basic gear, and see if we could get geared up and get out with some good stuff on the next run, but I also had a lot of people I was playing with who were very quickly getting fed up with getting wiped 3-4 times, even if we weren't necessarily losing anything. They just wanted more direct success, and that's not the type of experience that Marathon is going to provide unless you're willing to be a hardcore player who puts a ton of time and effort into it. It doesn't matter how fun and engaging and potentially difficult the PvE enemies are, with different mechanics and the ability to coordinate against them with your squad, if partway through that encounter and fighting a very difficult boss, another team hears the gunfire, comes in and just wipes your ass, takes all your stuff, and then potentially kills the thing that you were just fighting, or somehow even worse, dies to it as well, so nobody comes out on top and everyone has to go back to baseline. There are a lot of people who are just not going to be willing to engage with that gameplay loop and to deal with the challenge over and over again just to finally get that hit of success when they are able to pull it off with their team. And that's where I think Marathon's big issue is going to come from. Bungie is in a position where they need to be able to continue to engage the baseline, more casual player base, having them come back, having them continue to play enough to have fun themselves, while also having an environment where the most hardcore players constantly have a group of people to play against and a money base to continue developing the game that they're investing so much time into, or they're going to bounce for other products as well. We've seen it time and time again with many other just basic shooters on the market, to say nothing of the more niche genre of extraction shooters, and I don't have a lot of confidence at the moment that Bungie is going to be able to pull it off. Maybe they'll be able to prove us wrong, but 10 years, 11, 12 years at this point, actually, of Destiny has eroded that trust in pretty much everyone before you even get into the controversies surrounding Marathon's release. And as a lot of people who are longtime fans of Bungie and the Marathon franchise will say, it would be nice if this had just been a single player or potentially co-op traditional FPS campaign experience to bring back such a beloved franchise. Betting it all on something so very niche, when it's, even with the success of things like Arc Raiders, not the biggest thing in gaming, is a big risk, and from a company that doesn't have a lot of faith in the tank that they can pull off that type of risk. We'll have to see how things wind up shaking out. At baseline, I do think this release of Marathon in a couple of days is going to be fairly successful, because what is there currently is quite good, and I think a lot of people are coming around to that idea, but I can see that falling off extremely quickly if Bungie makes even one misstep, given the fact that they're pushing against the tide as it is to even get this thing out in a decent level of success. We'll have to see. I know there's a lot of vitriol around this title at the moment. I don't blame anyone for having that amount of suspicion or disgust towards it. I was in the same boat. I just got captured by the overall game world and gameplay feel, and so I'm at least willing to continue to give it a shot and see what Bungie is going to do with it going forward. But I don't blame anyone who has completely written it off and has no interest in even trying to engage with it going forward. That said, if you did play the Server Slam, watched other streamers play it, or have just been following along as time has gone by and are potentially looking forward to the release, let me know your thoughts in the comment. Are you completely writing this thing off from the jump? Did you play and wind up coming around to it a little bit? Are you hopeful, skeptical? I'd like to hear all of your thoughts in the comments. I will certainly be down there as well, chatting alongside all y'all. And potentially, once the full release comes around, maybe we'll at least do a stream or two to see how things are looking with all the additional content that's going to be added to the game. For now, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, y'all. And remember, be good to each other, everybody. Bye now.